Hello everyone, this is Quantilian. In this tutorial, I will show you how to create a character, a 3D character, using simple steps on Nomad Sculpt. And as always, you need to have a tablet compatible with Nomad Sculpt and a stylus or a pen, or in this case, a pencil. Before starting doing any character design, it is really good practice to look into references. So before starting, I had in mind to create an orange character based on the fruit. And why orange? Because I thought orange is the simplest shape and form that we could have, which is basically a sphere, and then we could manipulate that spheres to make it a little bit more characteristic. So just looking into some references, the way that I would look into my character is that there is a body and there are these tiny elements that is coming out of this body, which are the feet or legs and the arms. So let's jump into Nomad Sculpt. I have Nomad Sculpt in here and I'll start a new scene. So create a new scene. I was working on another project, as you've seen, which was on the Earth Day, but I decided not to continue with it. Plenty of incomplete projects, don't do that. Before we start, I've started a new scene, and now you would have this sphere, the default sphere coming. But before that, what I'll do is I want to click on the folder in here and reset the settings to default and reset the material library to default. The reason I'm doing so you can actually start clean with me. There are a couple of things I would like to do, and the first thing is in here. So this shortcut that you see in this corner, I like to have the camera snap, and to do so, if I go to my interface, which is these three sliders, I go all the way down and I find the camera reset and the camera snap. I also like the voxel to be there. I'm not very big fan of a mask, but anyhow, if you want to customize these, you could look into this option here. Also, I'm not very big fan of a grid. A grid is good for you to know where your object is based in terms of the 0, but for me, I like to work freely, and then easier or later on when I import this into another software where actually the flow matter, I can position it there. Anyhow, if you want the grid to disappear, you just click on the display setting here and you click on grid, and now we have the grid disappeared. We have this sphere in the middle. I just want to have these in tools available in a tray rather than on a slider. Click on gizmo. I will put this and move it a little bit up. So the way gizmo allow you to move across X, Y, and Z, if I highlight the green, then it would lock it to that direction. If I highlight the red, it would lock it to that direction. And the same tool allow you to either make it bigger or make it smaller if you use the bigger ring outside. Also, if you use the smaller ring inside, it would lock into rotating it, as you see. I will undo because I don't need to change anything as it is now. To create the basic forms of the character, I would need to have legs and arms, as we've discussed. So to do so, there is a small tool here, a very powerful one, which is the tube tool. By the way, I like to work in a certain camera because it allows me to use certain tools in a better way. So tube for me works better if I have it in an orthographic, because I can make sure that the lines are straight. If you are unsure about the differences between perspectives and orthographic, I think I've explained this before, but perspectives is more how human eyes work. Orthographic is more how you would draw a projection of an object that is in 3D space on 2D. Orthographic is more used in architecture, engineering, and mechanical manufacturing. Perspective is more in portraits, paintings, and in 3D. So let's start with the tube. In tube, you have two options. You have the path and the curve. Let me save this object, this scene quickly, and let me rename it orange. I think that would be added in the middle. So let me just remove everything in here and rename it orange character. And I've just saved it. So in tube, you have two options appearing here. One is path and one is curve. They are slightly different, as in path, you decide the path. So you decide the first point and the last point. However, in curve, it allows you to draw a curve on this object. Let me show you the differences. So here is a path and here is a curve. So you can see that the curve adjusts that tube into the object and follow it point to point. Now let me undo. Because we are creating legs in this case, what I need to do is to use path. I have symmetry on. By the way, you can turn it on and off later on, but I have it on from the beginning. And I want to draw these small or tiny legs. I'll try to make it as straight as possible. And the way to do so is I'm just moving it slightly until I feel that there is no kind of jaggering in this line. Clicking on green, now it is in place and it is symmetrical. What does that mean? Mean is there is a copy of it that is added and it would follow everything I do for this part in here. If I want to edit this, because it seems for me that they are very close to each other, I can simply click. Oops, I need to be in the same object tool. So I am in the tube. If I start moving it around using the gizmo, you can see I am adjusting it. What I'll do is I'll choose another perspective and look into the right. Usually legs would come from the middle of the body. So that's what I'll do. Also, if you are feeling that this is a little bit tiny for a leg, what you could do is you could simply go to the scene. Next to the scene, you have the topology. Under topology, you would have the geometry. And in this case, I could change the radius either from the start till the end or all of it together. And now, as you can see, I'm having a little bit of thicker legs. So sometimes you want to have a stylized leg where you would have something like a bodybuilder orange. So you would use something like this. For me, I want my orange to be healthy and fit, and that's it. So let's do that by giving it a little bit of a weight so it's not that tiny. You can turn the mirror on and off, and you can edit the path. So if you want, for example, to add a new point, you could just click on edit here and you add a point, and that would allow a different customization for the way these look like. I'm happy with the way things are, so click on finish, and now I have my leg in place. Let me add the arm in a similar way. So to add the arm, I would go to a perspective that is or to an isometric view, somewhere like that. Isometric is a type of an orthographic view where you have 30 and 60 sometimes in the way that the X and Y projects. Anyhow, I am now in my isometric. I would go again to the tube. And as you can see, I like the fact that every time you are clicking or double clicking on an item, then you're highlighting it. And when it's highlighted, you can simply start working with it. When it comes to rendering, I like to turn this off. So if you go to display setting, you have in here darken unselected meshes. You can turn it off, but while you're working, it's really good to keep it on. So now I have the tube and I want to use a path. I want the symmetry to be on. and my first point would be here, my second point would be somewhere here. And what I like about the tube, if you click, it would change the type of the dot. So it's a slight change, but you could actually feel it. So now this is more of a bezier, and this is more of a straight cut, and this is a straight cut as well. Because I've clicked on the object behind, you can see what happens. This shows better in this corner, so you can see this is a smooth bezier tube, and here is a harsh cut. Let's use this smooth, and as you can see now, I have these in place. I've clicked on the green dot and it is auto saving. That's really good. One thing I would like to do is I would select these, and before validating them, I just want to make sure that they are in the center. Well, I can feel that at the beginning of this tutorial, I have moved my sphere. Don't do that. You can always, by the way, come back and redraw the sphere. So in this case, my sphere has moved and I want it to be exactly precise in the middle. So feel free just to go to scene, delete it, and then add a new sphere from primitive. And while this doesn't look exactly the same, it's simply go to the topology and validate it first, and then subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. I think the actual one has 4 subdivision, so the one that comes default. Always pay attention to these numbers in here because it tells you how your device is copying. So I have this almost in place. Oh, I'll keep the subdivide, and now I just want to validate this, the arms in here, and validate the legs. I did already validate them, which is a good thing. Now I have almost my character in place. Let's start working on some of the interesting features for the character. So let's start with the mouth. There are different ways of how you can do the mouth. The one I'm suggesting in here is by taking the mouth all inside and then probably adding teeth later on. So to do so, what I'll do is use the mask tool, and the mask tool would allow me to mask certain areas, as you probably see. I can start with the front, so I am in the front, and then I'll start drawing the mouth. By the way, part of this tutorial is inspired by a great Cinema 4D artist named Aaron Martinez. Aaron do these beautiful characters. He does them in 3D, but also he shows you in 3D how to do so. So big hi to Aaron. So what I did is just I draw a small happy smiley face. In this case, I want this mouth to be pushed in. It's more like extruding it in to allow a space to appear. To do so, if I click on gizmo and I start moving, what is moving is the white, not the black. So I need to invert the mask. By clicking on mask here, you would have the mask options appearing here. You just click on invert, and once that's done, what you could do is simply click on gizmo, and then you could start pushing your mouth in as you see. You could push it in and then make it a little bit bigger, which would allow a mouth to show. By the way, once you're done with this, you can always go back to mask and click on clear, and now I have a mouth in place. But you might ask me, what's happening here? It does look like very dense, and that's because of the way that this mesh is looking now. So if I was you, what I would do is I would start using this smooth tool and try to smooth some of these harsh angle. I would like you also to pay attention to the wire. So when I click on wire, which is actually the wireframe, you can see that this wire here is distorted, and that's because of the way that we pushed the geometry. One way to resolve this is to revoxel using this option that is in here. I don't want to do that now because I always like to work with the corrupted wireframe before moving into revoxelating. I can also go to topology, use the multi-resolution and go a little bit smaller, and then simply start smoothing areas. As you can see, you need to be careful how much you smooth, because what I did here is I've smoothed too much. That probably when I come back into here, that does not look okay. So undo, undo, undo. Let me go back into the way it was in here and start just smoothing some of these options here. I could actually move this a little bit slower and delete the higher and work on it. And once I'm really happy with the way it is, you could simply click on voxel and it would show you that multi-resolution will be lost. So all of this multi-resolution we had will be lost. And if you click OK, it would, as you see, re-put the geometry. Sometimes you would end up with areas like this and like in here. That does not matter, but in here I have a full, clean, voxelated, happy orange. Now the orange, if you look into it, it does not always have this kind of smooth face surface. By the way, before moving on, one other option I would like to turn on. Sometimes you feel there's like this artifact. It's not like a clean geometry for some areas. Look into these. And that's simply because the smooth shading is off. So under display setting, go to smooth shading. And once you have that on, these would disappear. Another thing I would like to do, but also it would increase the use of the processor on your device, is going to render resolution on the display option and then crack it all the way up, so you would have the maximum resolution. I'm using an iPad Pro, not the newest version, which is released a few days ago, but the last year version, and I think it's coping well. I have the mouth in place, I have the arms in place, I have the leg in place, and now let's add eyes. And I think you've guessed it right. So we start with a sphere. This sphere I want it to be mirrored. I will move this sphere up. I will scale it down. I could bring it a little bit up, scale it down again, and start moving it around. And now I have the eyeballs in place. That looks good for me for now. There are two different types of eyes. The one I will choose for this character is this kind of extruded eyes. You could have like a small dotty eyes using a cylinder and then squash or squeeze that cylinder and add these. But for now, because I want to show you also other tool, so keep this in mind. I have this in place. I would like them to be close. Always when you have eyes separated, it shows that the character is a little bit dumb. When it's closer, it has this kind of cheerful and a little bit of smartness. I mean, this is how I interpret characters, so don't take my words for it. Once you're happy with that, click validate. And now I want to have an eyelid for this for these eyes. To do so, I clicked on solo to isolate everything, and if I click on reset camera, that would bring my eyes in here. So I have those to create my eyes, which are the last sphere. It's always a good practice to rename your scene layers, but in this case, because of the time, I would like just to use them as you've seen here. So I would duplicate the sphere and now click again on solo, so I'm sure that the new spheres are duplicated. I'll make this a little bit bigger using this symmetry, and I can even move them closer somewhere like here. Before doing so, I can use what we call a trim tool, and the trim is like you having this clay and you're allowed to cut part of it. And I want to do this. I want to cut half of what we've seen in here. Click on trim. There are two or many different trim options. The one I will be using is line, and you could flip where the direction of the cut is. So for me, the white represents where the cut should be. So click where the point would be, and I would like half of these to disappear. again approximating where exactly a half would be. Sometimes imperfection makes nicer design. Now I have these in place. I still have the tool in my hand, and I'm happy that didn't affect anything. I can see now after clicking on solo that I brought back my character, and I can move the eyelid. I've made them already bigger, but now it's time to somehow rotate them. So clicking on the red round line around my sphere, I can see that it is rotating now. Sometimes what would happen if the objects are too close and using the trim, it would somehow put these objects and add them as one, and that's what happened in here. So you can see now my two eyelids are somehow attached, but that's totally fine for this character. Let's check our wireframe, how we are doing. You can see sometimes even when you're using trim that the geometry or the topology has been somehow distorted. That's totally fine. What I would need now is, let's have an iris for these eyes, and you could either draw them, but I always prefer to use a sphere. So if you look into human eyes, you would find that the area where the iris is a little bit extruded. It's like we have a small sphere within a bigger one, and that's how I would do the eyes in here. So to do so without cloning from the actual scene menu, I would go to clone here and then just move these a little bit, and then I can make them smaller, and I can start clicking on symmetry and then move them around. What happens again, because I made them smaller while they are very close to each other, so they became one. What I'll do is I'll move them away and then make them smaller, move them away again and make them smaller until I'm happy with their size and make them smaller. So I'm just using the gizmo tool, and in here you see now I have these in place. I can simply make this a little bit different by pushing and squeezing these spheres, and now I have these eyes in place. I'll make them closer to each other, and we have our character somehow ready. You say somehow because there are some options that we need to do for this character to look a little bit better. So let's start with, first of all, I would like to give him a little bit of a gloves. For this case, I don't want to sculpt the gloves, but give them like a very small sphere sculpts. Again, I'll use the eyes. I will clone them, click on clone. I will move them, and I will use the symmetry and separate them, put them all the way down, move them back in here and make them closer. And here I would have my small gloves. I need them to be smaller, but I also want to use them for a shoe. So let's make these closer and move them all the way up here, closer, and probably moving them into here and into there. And now I have my hands in place. Double click on the other spheres, and I want these spheres to be the shoe. I can click on here, click on right, and move them all the way to the feet. One thing I would do is I will trim them before bring them to each other like I've done now. So let's move them, trim them before bring them close to each other. In this case, click on trim. I want this to be in the middle, and here you go. Click again on gizmo. I would make these smaller. I would even push them to be longer, and we have what looks like a small simple shoes that will do for now. Let me push this a little bit back and push them down and bring them closer, not so close so they do touch, but close enough that they represent an actual shoe. and allow us to look into these character as a whole. Now we have the character in place, and that looks good. Let's start adding some little details. So I don't like my character to have an open mouth. I would like him to have teeth, and to have teeth I would simply click on adding a sphere, sorry, a cylinder. As you've noticed by now, we have not used any sculpting tool as in proper sculpting. In this sphere, in this cylinder, I would make this cylinder smaller and again smaller and take it all the way up. And now you could start seeing that this would work as a teeth for my character. And if I make this a little bit bigger on this direction, you can see that I have this for the upper teeth, and I can simply rotate it a little bit to make it more natural. You could add the same by cloning it, by the way, to the under or lower teeth, and now you have this in place. To give this a little bit of realistic feeling, I would isolate them. So click on solo, and then I would validate them, and I would look into the wireframe of which these have been created. This is a very low density for me in order to do anything using Sculpt. So our sculpting tool, I would just click on subdivide, and in here I can use my crease tool. I would make sure that my crease tool is in sub, and I can simply make sure that the symmetry is on. And what I'll do is I'll start taking lines, and these lines would actually show what we call teeth. You could make your teeth big, you could make them small, it's up to you. I will turn off the symmetry, and I would just do the middle teeth in here. And now I have a teeth in place. If this doesn't look very detailed as you would like it to, it's simply because the resolution is not high. So if I subdivide it again and then start working on it, that would look better. If you're not sure about subdivision and typology, I've explained this in the first video I have uploaded. I click on solo again, and now we have these teeth in place. Click on the lower teeth, solo them, click on front, and go again, highlight it with subdivide, go to symmetry, and I like to use the wire just to make sure that my understanding for the line is correct. This is coming from my background of using 3D modeling tools. If you are coming from a background where you are used to using sculpting clay, I think that you would not be needing any of these guidance. You could use, I have subdivided again because I didn't feel that the previous resolution allowed me to do the same detail I am creating in here. By the way, sometimes this is not the ideal way because there is this wasted voxels. So this is not the optimized way of how you model things or sculpt things, but it is a way to get you started. Probably later on I would need to come back and refine some of these options as you would need to. So what we've done here again is we've done the lower teeth, and we have the upper teeth, and everything seems all right. We just need to give this a little bit of a character, and we have this tip of the orange on top that we need to add. So click on scene, click on cylinder, make this cylinder smaller, and then move it all the way up again and put it in place. Probably I need this to be really longer and thinner, and here we have it in the center, which is totally fine. Okay, so if that's the case, I can click on validate, and here I have my orange all is ready as a character. One thing I would like to do to make this more appealing and to give it a little bit of a better feeling is to give this a texture. And to do this, what I need to do is to go to brush, and in brush I would isolate this. I would look for a specific, so I am in brush, I would look for a specific type of brush in here, and I would like to use a dot brush and try to change the alpha. You could find existing textures or you could do your own, and if you're interested in showing you how to do your own, I'm happy to do this in a tutorial. Just leave a comment below. Let me look for something that could actually work to give this a little bit of a texture. So this is working well for me. What I need to do, as you probably see, changing this into a matte cap, because matte cap has a better way of understanding how light, at least for me, work. And I'll change this into a more of a gray one. By the way, also you could download your matte caps, and matte caps can be used to customize the way that your characters look like, so you don't have to be stick to the shading PBR. You could always use matte cap, and I've seen pretty and amazing work for artists using Nomad Sculpt on Meta cap, isn't it? Matte cap. So let me just add this little bit detail. As you can see, it's a process of creating something and give it a texture. And now I have covered almost every single area of my orange. I can simply click on solo again, and now I'm back. Let me come back to my PBR shading, and let me just give this quick coloring. So for the body, I want this to be orange, and I'm clicking on the material itself, and again on the color underneath. You could enter the color, by the way, here. If you have certain colors to use, you can specify the roughness, and usually orange would have some kind of reflection on them, but they wouldn't be metallic unless you want to do a stylized orange. So let's leave the metalness somewhere here and force paint all. I would use the same color to force paint the eyes, the eyelid. Now for the arms or for the hands, I can do that, and for the legs or feet, I can do the same, and I can leave these as white, but I want these to be a matte white. So let's find this white here, give it all the roughness I could have, and throw this in white. Of course, you could experiment. For teeth, however, click on paint again, find or give them a little bit of shyness, not too shiny though, somewhere like here. First force paint and force paint. The same I would use for the eyes, force paint, and I would do a black one for the iris. Click on here, black, force paint, and let me do this with a color or a splash of green. So let's do a green that looks like this, paint it all, and I have here my character in place. Let me remove darken unselected meshes, but let's before that give this a little bit of soul, so it's not like a straight 90-degree perpendicular tip. So to do this, I could use the move tool, for example, and because it's on symmetry, it's allowing me to move it in a specific direction. So you can see now that looks okay. I could move it in this direction. That does not look okay at all. So let me move it in this direction. Yeah. and then I would gizmo it and rotate it and bring it back to the center. If you would like to have also a more natural place for the tip to come in, you can go to the brush tool here, go back to a normal brush through the use of stroke, and then somehow use the sub and try to push the area slowly in here. And then you could work all your way. Of course, I've done horrible thing here. I mean, it could be like an orange had an accident. But you could work your way here. Also, you could use the mask and then push it all the way down, and that would provide a more of a natural host for your tip. Now, our character is in place. What I need to do is first of all save it. Here's save. And second, remove darken unselected meshes and change the camera to be perspective. And if I start moving my HDRI, you can see now that my character looks okay. It looks better than what I expected, and it has only been 35 minutes. So this is the first video of this series. In the next video, I would show you how you could light or apply lighting to the scene, work a little bit with HDRI, and show your character in the best way possible. This is Quantilian again. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to this very tiny channel, and I will see you again. Bye bye now. Oh, one thing, don't forget to share it with people who might be interested with it. Probably your friend, your colleague, your family. Bye again.